Bro, my god, there's someone playing with us. So bullet resistance is really useful in standoffs and maybe also in open world when you're defending outposts, because they provide you those extra bullet resistance, and those bullet resistance, they're converted to your health. And besides the bullet resistance, you can also have, I don't know, extra laceration protection, you can have stamina, you can have all types of buff, and it depends artifacts per artifacts, obviously, in the category of bullet resistance. The onion provides you stamina that ranges from 3.9% to 7.8%, a bull resistance which ranges to 2.6 to 5.8, psi emission protection from -1 to 0.5%, which is really useful when you are running other artifacts that are requiring some debuffs of their psi effects. So if you need some counters, maybe having also bullet resistance, you can use the onion. But the onion also has a downside, which just gives you a radiation effect, going to give you a debuff of 0.25 or 0.5, which is not a lot. It's not a lot, and in fact you can run 3 of them also if you want to, since the maximum is 0.5. Obviously it varies, the effects varies to its rarity. So you can go from common, uncommon, special, rare, exceptional to legendary. These are the 6 quality of the artifacts. These are the mediums. Usually these are the mediocre rolls when you roll the artifacts. Maybe sometimes you can get higher from bullet resistance and lower for stamina. In this case, I don't know, maybe for the onion you can get more stamina and less bullet resistance, or maybe more psi emissions protection instead of stamina and bullet resistance. But yeah, I'm just reading the stats right here. Yeah, so for the onion at the common quality at level 15, you have an endurance of 10.14% at full level, 0.5 radiation, and a psi emission of -1.30, a bullet resistance of 7.54. Summing all its additional property, if I'm going, I can have 3.38% more. So summing 10.14 plus 3.38, it's going to give me a 13.52% endurance. If I sum the psi emission with the additional property, the psi emission that provides me is -0.78 is going to give me -2.08 psi emission, which is really a lot. Maybe if I'm using 4 steel hedgehog, it's going to counter those 4 psi emission, since the effects of psi emission is going to start when you have it at 1.5. so if you have 1.44 you can still be safe, and if you instead go over 1.5 psi emission, you're going to start having the debuffs. So it's a really great artifacts if you want them. Instead, for the green one, you can have the endurance at 11.05%, a radiation of 0.49, a psi emission of -1.42, and a bull resistance of 8.22. and if I have it level 15, I have access to additional properties. It's going to give me an additional stamina of 3.68, which summing it to 11.05% of stamina from the standard buff is going to give me an additional 4.73% of stamina, which is a lot. So just for an uncommon one, I mean for the green one. For the psi emission instead, having as additional buff, can have 0.85, and summing it for the standard psi emission effect, it's going to have, so I'm going to sum -1.42 and -0.85. It's going to give me 2.27 psi radiation, which is really lot. So we're really near just having one onion to counter all those debuffs of the psi emission artifacts. And so for the bullet resistance instead, gives me 2.83 for additional effect, and so summing to 8.22 plus 2.83 is going to give me an 11.05 bullet resistance. It's pretty low, yeah, it's pretty low, but since it's just an artifact which is used usually to counter psi emission effects, since it has minus psi radiation or psi emission, it's really useful since it provides you also stamina and bullet resistance. And for the blue one instead, you can have a stamina of 12.07, 0.49 radiation effect, and a psi emission of -1.55, and a bulletproof of 8.97. So having it level 15 and having all additional properties is going to give me a stamina of 4.02%. It's going to give me a psi emission protection of -0.93 and a bulletproof of 3.9. So summing the endurance with the additional property endurance is going to give me 12.07 plus 4.02%. With the stamina, summing the staminas from the additional properties and normal buff is going to give me 16.09% of stamina. If I sum the psi emissions, the additional property, -1.55, 0, 0.93 is going to give me a 2.48 psi emission, and that's great. That's really great for an onion instead. That's really great. And if I instead sum the bullet resistance, which is 8.97, the additional bullet resistance, which is 3.09, so 897 plus 3.09 is going to give me a total of 12.06 bullet resistance, which is really great. It's good. It's almost near the white Prism and the white steel Hedgehog level, but it's not there yet. And going in with rarity, the stamina the onion provides you is 13.08%, a radiation of 0.49, a psi emission protection of -0.68, and a bulletproof of 9.73. And having it level 15 and having all additional properties is going to give me an endurance of 4.36%, which is a stamina. So it's going to have give me a stamina of 4.36%, a psi emission of -1.01, a bullet resistance of 3.35. So summing the staminas, both buffs, 13.08 plus 4.36 is going to give me 17.44% of stamina. And if I want to sum the psi emission protection, 0.68 plus 1.01 is going to give me a 2.69 protection from the psi emission, which is really great. And considering that you can put 2 of them already, you can put 3 Prism in your build, which will counter all psi emission side effects. Since it's 2.69 multiplying by 2, you can have 5.38 just by having 2 purple onions and having, I don't know, maybe 3 steel Hedgehog, and it's really great. That's really good. The red rarity, which is the exceptional, the stamina bit is going to be 4.09%. The psi radiation is psi emission is going to be -1.81, and a bullet resistance of 10.48. And if you have it at level 15, you can have all the additional properties. It's going to, for the stamina, you're going to have 4.7%, and for the psi emission, it's going to be -1.08, and a bullet resistance of 3.61. Again, summing all of them, summing the endurance with its additional property, endurance, so 14.09 plus 4.7 is going to give me an 18.79% of stamina. And summing psi emissions protection, 1.81 plus 1.08 is going to give me a -2.89 psi emission, which is really great. And the bulletproof instead, so the bullet resistance, 10.48 plus 3.61 is going to give me a 14.09 bullet resistance, just for the red one. And for the legendary one, so the final one, which is the legendary, so if you're able to pull the legendary artifact at the onion at level 15, you're going to have 15.11% of stamina, 0.49% of radiation, -1.94 of psi emission, and you're going to have 11.23 bullet resistance. And having it level 15 with additional property, the endurance it will provide you is going to be 5.04%, a psi emission protection of -1.16, a bullet resistance of 3.87. So summing them, 15.11 plus 5.04% is going to give me 20.15%. So summing the stamina, it's going to give me 15.11%, and 5.04% of stamina is going to give me 20.15. With the psi emissions, summing 194 and -116 is going to give me 3.1, which is exaggerated for just one onion. Imagine having 2 legendary onions. And then for the bullet resistance instead, 11.23 plus 3.87 is going to give you a 15.1 of bullet resistance. Yeah, so those are the properties of the onion, and so ranging from the white version to the green one, blue, purple, red, and then legendary. The onions you can find from the gravitational anomalies, and specifically from the trampolines, and those are the artifacts which, if you jump from it, it's going to give you some boost to your jump. They changed the trampoline style, so instead of being damaged when you jump to it and having the additional full damage, it's only going to affect you the full damage, and the damage that you'll get from this anomaly, it's not going to be affecting you anymore. So And the next one instead is the Viner. Provides you carry rate of 3.5 to and a bull resistance of 3.05 to 6.8 and the radiation effect of 0.37 to 0.75. The psi emission protection of -1.2 -0.6. So they're almost like the same with the Onion if you compare them, but all the difference is that the Viner has a carry rate instead of the stamina. The good thing also, it has those 0.2% more of psi emission, which is going to be usually, if they have a higher rarity, it's going to be affecting them a lot. So if you have the white one, it's going to give you a carry rate of 7 at level 15. So consider that everything that I'm going to tell you, they're all level 15. So the white Viner, so the quality of the ordinary one or the common one, is going to be 7.93, but this time the radiation is going to be higher, which is going to be 0.75, and it has a psi radiation or psi emission of -1.56 and a bullet resistance instead of 8.84. And the additional properties of these artifacts instead are carry rate. So with the carry rate you can have 2.73 and psi emission of -1.69 and a bullet resistance of 2.99. So if you want to sum the carry rate with the additional property, it's going to be 2.73 plus 7.93. So summing them is going to give you a 10.66 carry rate, and for an artifact like this, it's really great. Looking at it as a white artifact, it's good. And the psi emission instead is going to be 1.56 minus its additional property, which is -1.69. So it's going to give me a 3.25 of psi emission. And instead, if I have the bulletproof, the bullet resistance is going to be 8.84 plus 2.99. So summing them all is going to give me an 11.83 bullet resistance. So it's really great just for a white one, for a white Viner. So instead, going on with the uncommon. With uncommon, you can have a carry rate at level 15 at 8.64, a radiation of 0.74, a psi emission of 1.70, and a bullet resistance of 9.64. And if you have it at level 15, additional properties going to be psi emission, which is going to be a -1.84, a carry rate of 2.98, and a bullet resistance of 3.26. So summing again all this stuff, you have 8.64 plus 2.98 is going to be 11.62 carry rate. And if I want to sum the psi emissions, 1.7 plus 1.84 is going to give me 3.54 psi emissions. So I can counter all psi emission effects with for 3.54. And for the bullet resistance instead, it's going to be 9.64 plus 3.26, and it's going to give me a 12.9 bullet resistance just for the green one. And so we're slowly going up there almost to the level of a white Prism and white steel Hedgehog, and I think we're already in the level of a white steel Hedgehog. I think 13.1 or 13.2, I don't recall, but maybe later I'm going to know it together. The blue one, so the blue Viner, is going to give you a carry rate of 9.44. It's going to give you a radiation of 0.74 as usual. It's going to give you a psi emission of -1.86 and a bullet resistance of 10.52. So if you're having a level 15 with additional property, it's going to give you a 3.25 carry rate. You're going to have a psi emission of -2.01 and a bullet resistance of 3.56. Summing all those stuff, you have 9.44 plus 3.25 is going to give you a 12.69 carry rate. And for the psi emission instead, you're going to have 1.86 plus 2.01, so you're going to have -3.87 psi emission protection. So it's quite a lot just for a blue one. And for the bullet resistance instead, you're going to have 10.52, 3.56 is going to give you a 14.08 bullet resistance. So now you can consider it as a Prism, since the Prism has at white level, it's going to be 14 maximum pull. So if you roll the Prism at 100%, you're going to have 14 bullet resistance at level 0, obviously. So the purple, it's going to give you a 10 for the carry rate, is going to give you a 10.23, a radiation of 0.74, a psi emission of -2.01, and a bullet resistance of 11.40. The carry rate is the additional properties. If you have it at level 15, it's going to give you a carry rate of 3.52, a radiation of 2.18, and a bullet resistance of 3.86. If you sum them all, 10.23 plus 3.52 for the carry rate is going to give you 13.75 of carry rate. The psi emission instead is 2.01 plus 2.18 is going to give you a 4.09 psi emission protection. So that that's super a lot just for one binder. And for bullet resistance instead, it's going to give you 3.86 plus 11.4, so you have 15.26 bullet resistance just for one purple binder. Okay, so instead talking now about the exceptional, which is the red one quality, the binder that will give you 11.02 of carry weight at 0.74 of radiation is going to give you a sight emission of minus 2.17 and a bullet resistance of 12.29. so if you have the level 15, it's going to give you additional property for the carry weight is going to be 3.79 and it's an emission of minus 2.35 and a bullet resistance of 4.16, which is going to give you, if we sum the carry weight with additional properties, is going to give me 11.02 plus 3.79, which is going to be 14.81. and instead, if I sum the sight emissions, which are 2.17, 2.35, it will give me 4.52 of sight emission protection. And for the bullet resistance instead, 12.29 plus 4.16 is going to be 16.45. so yeah, that's great for a binder, just for one binder instead at level 15. And instead, if we are talking about the legendary, the carry weight is going to be 11.82. the sight emission is going to be, it's going to give me a radiation of 0.74. the sight emission is going to be minus 2.32 and the bullet resistance is going to be 13.17. and the carry weight that will provide me with additional properties when it's level 15, it gives me carry weight of 4.07, a sight emission of 2.72 and a bullet resistance of 4.46. so it's going to be, so summing them all is going to be 11.82 for the carry weight plus 4.07, and it's going to provide me 15.89 of carry weight. And for the sight emission is going to be 2.32 and 2.52 of sight protection. Sight emission protection is going to give me 4.84, and for the bullet resistance instead, it's going to be 13.17 plus 4.46 is going to give me 1763 of bullet resistance. so that's just for the legendary one. It's really useful. The binder are usually obscured by people. They don't usually give that much importance to these artifacts like the onion and the binder, since yeah, they just want the bullet resistance. so if they see that the bullet resistance is high, that means it's good, and they will only accept it if it's only red or purple, or maybe also legendary. I mean, legendary, no one, literally everybody picks legendary, even if it's the worst artifacts that in the game. Already starting with the onion and then the binder, like I told you, level 15 with all those properties, it already gives you a lot of additional buffs, not just bullet resistance, which yes, I know it's useful, but for the binder it can give you a carry weight, and then can give you sight emission, which you can pair them, I don't know, with bracelets, or maybe you can also pair them with snake eyes or vitality, so it gives you vitality. And also for the onion instead, it can give you a stamina, and then maybe pair it with snake eyes. It's really great pairing it with snake eyes, since it's going to give you, and the snake eyes give you a speed boost now, since they changed effect fixing for the snake eye and the polyhedron. Imagine having snake eye level 15, so you have all those all those vitality and all those speed, plus the stamina, and plus the stamina that will be provided by you either by onions. I mean, yeah, going to be provided by you by the onion. And imagine putting 2 onions and then 3 snake eyes, so you're going to be fast, and also you're going to have a lot of resistance, plus with the buff that you get when you drink tonics and also energy drinks. And yeah, that's really a lot. Yeah, so the binder, you can find them in gravitational anomalies, and specifically like the onion, you can find them in trampolines. And so the probability you'll find these 2 artifacts is going to be high, since they are the common ones. If you are lucky to have the purples, then you consider yourself really grateful, because you can use them in future builds to counter all those OP artifacts that needs to be countered with sight emissions. So the next in the list is the Fahrenheit. So the Fahrenheit has at level 0 reaction to laceration of 2.10%, and has a temperature of minus 1.10, a cold effect of 0.5, and a bullet resistance of 6.5. So if you have level 15, you have a reaction to laceration of 2.72%, a temperature of minus 1.42, and a cold debuff of 0.5, and a bullet resistance of 8.40. If you have it at level 15 with all the additional properties, it's going to give you reaction to laceration of 0.91%, 1%, and a temperature of minus 1.16, a bullet resistance of 2.84. So summing reaction to laceration with the additional property is going to be set 2.72% plus 0.91. It's going to give a 3.63% of protection of reaction to laceration, and with the temperature instead is 1.42 plus 1.16, that is going to be 2.58 minus 2.58 of temperature. So it's really great if you want to use Suns, which is an artifact which uses temperature. With the bullet resistance instead, since it's 8.4, and with the additional property which is 2.84, it's going to be 11.24 of bullet resistance. So this artifact, like the viners and the onions, they're most likely used to counter the temperature, since it is present in the artifact and it has all this quantity of buff to counter all those artifacts which uses temperature. The reaction to laceration instead, I don't know how does that work. Maybe it's against bleeding, maybe when you are so to avoid to get more bleeding effect when you are hit by a ghoul, or maybe when you're hit by a mutant, but I don't know, I can't be sure. But in this case, it gives those quantity of reaction to laceration. With the green one, you can get a reaction to laceration of 2.98%, a temperature of minus 1.56, and cold debuff of 0.49, and a bullet resistance of 9.21. With additional properties, a level 15 is going to give you a reaction to laceration of 0.99%, a temperature of minus 1.28, and a bullet resistance of 3.12. Summing the reaction to laceration, 2.98 plus 0.99 is going to give you 3.97, and a temperature instead 1.56, 1.28 is going to be 2.84. Bullet resistance of 9.21 plus 3.12, which is 12.33. So for the blue one instead, it's going to give you a reaction to laceration of 3.25% and a temperature of minus 170, cold debuff of 0.49, and a bullet resistance of 10.06. With the additional properties, a level 15 is going to give you a reaction to break at 1.08%, a temperature of minus 139, and a bullet resistance of 3.40. Summing the reaction to laceration of 3.25 plus 1.08% is going to give you 4.33 of reaction to laceration. The temperature instead is 1.7 plus 1.39 is going to give you a 3.09 minus temperature, and then the bullet resistance instead is going to be 10.06 plus 3.4, which gives me 13.46 of bullet resistance for the blue one. And for the purple version of the Fahrenheit, it's going to give you a reaction to laceration of 3.52%, a temperature of 1.84, cold debuff of 0.49, and a bullet resistance of 10.9. And with the additional properties, it's going to give you a reaction to laceration of 1.17%, a temperature of minus 1.51, and a bullet resistance of 3.69. Summing all these properties, a reaction to laceration with the original one, and then with the additional property, which is 1.17, it's going to give you 4.69. Instead of temperature, 1.84, 1.51 is going to give you a minus 3.35 temperature, and then with the bullet resistance of 10.9 plus 3.69 is going to give you a 14.59 bullet resistance. Then with the red artifact instead, with the red Fahrenheit, is going to give you a reaction to laceration of 3.79%, a temperature of minus 1.99, and a cold debuff of 0.49. The bullet resistance instead is going to give you 11.75, and with the additional properties, reaction to laceration is going to give you 1.26%, a temperature of minus 163, and a bullet resistance of 3.98. Summing all of them, 3.79 plus 1.26 is going to give you a 5.05% of reaction to laceration, then a temperature of 1.99 with 1.63 is going to give you 3.62 temperature. With the bullet resistance instead is 11.75 plus 3.98 is going to be 15.73 bullet resistance. With the legendary instead is going to give you a reaction to laceration of 4.07%, a temperature of 2.13, and a cold debuff of 0.49, a bullet resistance of 12.59, and with the additional properties of the legendary artifact is going to give you the reaction to laceration of 1.36%, a temperature of minus 1.74, and a bullet resistance of 4.26. Summing the reaction to laceration with its additional property is going to give you 4.07 7% plus 1.36, and it's going to give you 5.33. With the temperature inside at 2.13 plus 1.74 is going to give you a minus 3.87 of temperature, and then with the bullet resistance instead is going to give you 12.59 plus 4.26, giving you 16.85 of bullet resistance, and that's for the Fahrenheit. So with the Fahrenheit, usually you can find them in whatever type of anomaly it is, whether it is biochemical, whether it is gravitational, whether it is electrophysical, so you can find them everywhere. The important thing is you find a huge body of anomalies, so you get more chances, but obviously you can find them in small bodies of anomalies, or you can find them even in one anomaly. So whether it's trampoline, whether it is biochemical, fire, thermal, and all those stuff, you can find the Fahrenheit. That's the specialty of the Fahrenheit also, because so this artifact usually, like the viner, like the onion, they are more used to counter those artifacts which uses large amount of debuffs. For example, temperature in this case, maybe you can use 3 suns just to counter the effects of the sun. Yeah, but it is really great. This is a good artifact. Yeah. The rose gives you bullet resistance that ranges from 3.15 and then 7, bullet explosion protection that ranges from 1.75 to 3.9. But in this case, this artifact uses psi emissions. Like in the previous artifacts, with the onion, usually it was radiation, with the viner it was radiation, the Fahrenheit it was frost, and now instead it's the psi emissions. So the psi emission debuff of the rose is going to be from 0.75 to 1.5, making it level 15 with all its full potential. With the additional properties, is going to give you 1.49 psi radiation debuff, bullet resistance of 9.05, and explosion protection of 5.04. Having it level 15 and having the additional properties, it can provide you a 6.73 of carry weight, it can have a 3.10 bullet resistance, and then with explosion protection is going to give you 1.68. So summing only the bullet resistance, which is 9.05 and 3.1, is going to be 12.15 bullet resistance. With explosion protection instead is 5.04 plus 1.68 is going to give you a 672. Unfortunately, there's no carry weight buffs since it's the third buff of the rose, so you have good bullet resistance, which is almost like it was 12.15, but in the same time you also have carry weight, so that's good. For the green one instead, you're going to have a psi radiation or psi emission debuff of 1.49 and a bullet resistance of 9.92, an explosion protection of 5.53, and with additional properties at level 15 is going to give you a carry weight of 7.37, bullet resistance of 3.4, and explosion protection of 1.84. Summing the bullet resistance 9.92, 3.4 is going to give you a 13.32 bullet resistance, and explosion protection instead of 5.53 plus 1.84 is going to give you a 7.37. So for the blue one instead, it's going to give you a psi emission of 1.49 debuff, bullet resistance of 10.83, and explosion protection of 6.03. Additional property instead at level 15 it's going to give you a carry weight of 8.04, a bullet resistance of 3.71, and explosion protection of 2.01. Summing bullet resistance with the additional property, which is 10.83 plus 3.71, is going to give you 17.54, and the explosion protection instead is going to be 6.03 plus 2.01, is going to give me a protection of 8.04 explosion protection. So it's almost the same, it's the same amount of the carry weight. Purple instead, the purple rose instead provides you the same psi radiation, psi emission debuff, which is 1.49, but the bullet resistance is going to be 11.74. You're going to have an explosion protection of 6.54, and as additional property you have a carry rate of 8.72, bullet resistance of 4.02, and explosion protection of 2.18. So having 11.74 plus 4.02 of bullet resistance is going to give you 15.76, and then with the explosion protection, which is 6.54 plus 2.18, it's gonna give you 8.72 of explosion protection, which is almost there. It's quite good since the carry weight is 8.72, so it's really useful as an artifact since it's more there at bullet resistance at low tier. It can also provide you some carry weight, and that's good as an artifact. Yeah. Red artifact instead, the red rose, the psi radiation is still going to be 1.49, bullet resistance of 12.65, an explosion protection of 7.05, additional property of carry weight is going to give you 9.4, bullet resistance of 4.34, and an explosion protection of 2.35. Summing the 12.65 of bullet resistance with the additional property, which is 4.34, is going to give you 16.99, which is 17. in this case. Explosion protection instead of 7.05 plus 2.35 is going to give me a 9.4 explosion protection. The pattern here is always the explosion protection and the carry weight, they're almost the same. So the legendary one instead is going to give you a psi emission of 1.49, a bullet resistance of 13.56, and explosion protection of 7.55. The additional property at level 15 is going to give you a carry weight of 10.07, a bullet resistance of 4.65, an explosion protection of 2.57. Summing the bullet resistance 13.56 plus 4.65 is going to give me 18.21, and then explosion protection instead of 7.55 plus 2.52 is going to give me 10.07. Yeah, so the rows you can find them in trampolines, which is a gravitational anomaly, which is the ones where you find the viner and the onion. Okay, so the fifth artifact instead is going to be the shrimp. So the shrimp at level 0 is going to give you a carry weight which ranges from 5.45 and then 10.9, and a bullet resistance of 3.2 to 7.1, and a psi emission of 1.5 and 3 psi emission debuff. Level 15 white shrimp with additional properties is going to give you 14.17 carry weight, a psi emission of 3.3, and a bullet resistance instead of 9.23. Additional properties of the shrimp at level 15 is going to give me a carry weight of 4.81, and then an explosion protection of 7.41 and a bullet resistance of 3.12. Summing the carry weight, which is 14.17, 4.81 is going to be 18.98 of carry weight. The bullet resistance instead is 9.23 plus 3.12 is going to be 12.35. Yeah, okay, so the green one instead, a carry weight of 15.45, psi emission debuff of 2.97, bullet resistance of 10.06, and at level 15 is going to provide you a 5.24 carry weight, and then explosion protection of 8.08, and then a bullet resistance of 3.40 with the 15.45 plus 5.24 of carry weight is going to give you a 20.69, and then bullet resistance of 10.06 plus 3.4, which is going to give me a 13.46 of bullet resistance. For the blue one instead is going to give you a 16.86 of carry weight, a psi emission debuff of 2.97, a bullet resistance of 10.98. For the additional properties, which is the carry weight in this case is going to give me a 5.72, an explosion protection of 8.82, and then a bullet resistance of 3.71. So with the carry weight, which is 16.86 plus 5.72 is going to give me a 22.58, and then with the bullet resistance of 10.98 is going to give me plus 3.71, it's giving me 14.69 bullet resistance. So the purple one instead is going to give me a carry weight of 18.28, and then a psi emission of 2.97, a bullet resistance of 11.91, and at level 15 with additional properties is going to give me a carry weight of 6.20 and explosion protection of 9.56 and a bullet resistance of 4.02. Summing the carry weight of the first buff and then the additional property buff is going to give me 18.28 plus 6.2, it's going to be 24.48. And then the bullet resistance instead is 11.91 plus 4.02, which is going to be 15.93. The red one instead is going to give me a carry weight of 19.70, a bullet resistance of 12.83, and then with additional properties at level 15 is going to give me a carry weight of 6.69, an explosion protection of 10.30, and a bullet resistance of 4.34. So 19.7, which is the carry weight, plus 6.69 is going to give me a 26.39 of carry weight, and then a bullet resistance of 12.83 plus 4.34 is going to be 17.17 bullet resistance. The legendary quality gives you carry weight of 21.11, a psi emission of 2.97, a bullet resistance of 13.75, and with the additional property is going to give you a carry weight of 7.17, an explosion protection of 11.04, and then a bullet resistance of 4.65. So if you sum the carry weight, it's 21.11 plus 7.17, it's going to be a total of 28.28, and then with the bullet resistance instead, it's 13.75 plus 4.65 is going to give you an 18.4 bullet resistance, an explosion protection of 11.04. It's a great artifact because it usually saves you when you're using, for example, when you need some some carry weight, you have an emergency for those who are using Soviet bag. I can use my shrimps, my two shrimps. I know it's going to give you a debuff, which is psi emission. I can just use a transformer, which gives me an additional carry weight. Transformer, yeah, this just get rid of the debuff of the psi emission. And since the psi emissions only occur when you have 0.5 of debuff, it's going to activate. So since the shrimp, it's usually can either get a 20 carry weight or a 15 carry weight. It depends. You can also make this to 110 if you can at level 5 only. And imagine having this transformer at level 5, you can go also to go 120. So you can go to 160 with if you have the shrimp, the mule or the ace exoskeleton, maybe more than that. You can use it with the base layer, the backpack. So if you have the mule, it has 45 carry weight. Yeah, with the Citian I can go to 126, and if I use a buff like a tonic, it's going to give me 134. Imagine all the shrimps at level 15 is going to go also maybe 150. Okay, so the shrimp, you can find them usually in the whirlpool. So those are the anomalies that when you get sucked by it, you're going to be shredded if you don't escape in time. Not like the blender. The blender gives you time to get out, but instead if you stay for I think 2 seconds or 1 second in the whirlpool, you're going to be dead. The Scallop at level 0, it's going to give you a bullet resistance that ranges from 4.55 and then 10.1 bullet resistance, and then the explosion protection of 2.85 and 5.7, and a radiation of 0.75 and 1.5. And then having it at level 15, going to have a radiation of 1.5, a bullet resistance of 13.13, an explosion protection of 7.41, and a bleeding. If you have it at level 15, you're going to have a bleeding of minus 1.17, a bullet resistance of 4.42, and then an explosion protection of 2.47. And if you sum those numbers, 13.13 plus 4.42 is going to give you a bullet resistance of 17.55, an explosion protection of 7.41, and 2.47 is going to be 9.88. For the green one instead, you will have a radiation of 1.49, a bullet resistance of 4.31, an explosion protection of 8.08. If you have it level 15, you're going to have a bleeding of minus 1.28, a bullet resistance of 4.82, and then an explosion protection of 2.69. So summing the bullet resistance, 4.31 plus 4.82 is going to be 19.13. Explosion protection instead of 8.08 plus 2.69 is going to give you a 10.77 of explosion protection. The blue Scallop radiation is going to give you a 1.49, bullet resistance of 15.62, explosion protection of 8.82, and if you have it at level 15, you're going to have a bleeding of minus 1.39, a bullet resistance of 5.26, an explosion protection of 2.94, and summing the bullet resistance 5.62 plus 5.26 is going to give you a bullet resistance of 20.88. People overlook this artifact. I see a lot of people, and also in the chat, they just dismiss the blue Scallop, saying it's bad. People they don't know the exact strength of the artifacts when they have it at level 15, and they say it's not worth it, it's not worth it. Of course it's not going to be worth, because people will always choose the steel hedgehog and will always choose the prism over these artifacts, or maybe they choose the cursed rose, which is obviously an artifact that is really good because it's in the higher tier in my opinion. And the explosion protection of 8.82 plus 2.94 is going to give you 11.76 of explosion protection. And for the purple one, it's going to give you a radiation of 1.49, a bullet resistance of 16.94, an explosion protection of 9.56, and at level 15 is going to give you an additional property of bleeding of minus 1.51, a bullet resistance of 5.70, and then an explosion protection of 3.19. So you have 16.94 plus 5.7. You're going to have 22.64 of bullet resistance, and explosion protection instead 9.56 plus 3.19 is going to give you 12.75 of explosion protection. And for the red one instead, it's going to be a radiation of 1.49, a bullet resistance of 18.25, an explosion protection of 10.30, and at level 15 is going to give you an additional property of bleeding of minus 1.63, a bullet resistance of 6.14, and then explosion protection 3.43, summing the 18.25 plus 6.14 is going to give you a 24.39 bullet resistance, and then explosion protection of 10.30 plus 3.43 is going to be 13.73 explosion protection. And then for the legendary artifact instead, radiation of 1.49, bullet resistance of 1956, and explosion protection of 11.04. Level 15, you're going to have an additional property. The bleeding provides you minus 174, bullet resistance of 6.59, and then explosion protection of 3.68. If you sum 1956 plus 659, it's going to give you 26.15 bullet resistance, and then explosion protection of 11.04 plus 368 is going to give you 14.72 explosion protection. So the Scallop, you can find the Scallop at thermals, usually in the Infernos. You can find them in the Infernos. In the lighter, I usually find them in the lighter, in this lighter's artifact. I also rarely see them in this type of artifacts. Usually where you find red crystals, you find leeches, you find viburnums, you find wolf tear, yeah, and all those kind of of anomalies. I find them usually there. And Scallop is also, they're also useful as an artifact in this type of anomaly. The next artifact instead is the Crust. It's another winter event artifact which you can only find in December, in the events of December and January. They usually are in the blizzards like the Fahrenheit. At level 0, it has a bullet resistance that ranges from 4.55 to 10.1, and a laceration protection of 3.8 to 7.6, and a frost that ranges from 0.25 to 0.5. At level 15, the white one, you can find you have a cold of 0.5, bullet resistance of 13.06, and then a laceration protection. You have a laceration protection of 9.83, and then if you have them at level 15 with additional buff, you're going to have a temperature of minus 1.03, a bullet resistance of 4.40, and a laceration protection of 3.36. So summing the bullet resistance, 13.06 plus 4.4 is going to provide you a 17.46, and then a laceration protection of 9.83 plus 3.36 is going to be 13.19 of laceration protection. So this is literally the protection against the mutants when they hit you, so you have less damage, you'll get less damage. And with the green one instead, you have a cold of 0.49, a bullet resistance of 14.31, laceration protection of 10.77, and then at level 15 you have additional properties, and it's going to give you a minus 1.13 of temperature. You're going to have a bullet resistance of 4.82, laceration protection of 3.68, so 14.31, 4.82 is going to give you a 19.13, laceration protection of 10.77 plus 3.68 is going to give you a 14.45 of laceration protection with the green one. Okay, so the blue one inside is going to give you a cold of 0.49, a bullet resistance of 15.62, laceration protection of 11.76, and level 15 is going to provide a temperature of minus 1.24, a bullet resistance of 5.26, and then a laceration protection of 4.02. So adding both bullet resistance, which is 15.62, plus 5.26 is going to be 20.88, and then a laceration protection of 11.76 plus 4.02 is going to be 15.78 for the blue one. So for the purple one instead, it's going to give you a cold of 0.49 and a bullet resistance of 16.94, a laceration protection of 12.75, and then at level 15 is going to provide you a temperature of minus 1.34, a bullet resistance of 5.7, and then a laceration protection of 4.36. Summing the bullet resistance with a total buff of 16.94 plus 5.7 is going to be 22.64. Laceration protection of 12.75 plus 4.36 is going to be 17.11. Okay, for the red crust instead, you're going to have cold debuff of 0.49, a bullet resistance of 18.25, a laceration protection of 13.73, and at level 15 you're going to have a temperature of minus 1.45, a bullet resistance of 6.14, and then a laceration protection of 4.7, and summing the bullet resistance 8.25 plus 6.14, you're going to add 24.39, laceration protection 13.73 plus 4.7, you're going to have 18.43 of protection to laceration. Legendary Crust, you're going to have a cold of 0.49, a bullet resistance of 19.56, a laceration protection of 14.72, and then a temperature at level 15 you're going to have a buff of temperature which is minus 1.55, and then a bullet resistance of 6.59, a laceration protection of 5.04. So you're going to have 19.56 plus 6.59 is going to give you a 26.15 bullet resistance, and for the laceration protection instead you're going to have 14.72 plus 5.04. You're going to have 19.76 of the laceration protection. Yeah, so usually, like I told you before, the Crust you can find them whatever type of anomaly, whether it is the electrophysical, which is gravitational, trampoline, blender, whirlpool, or biochemical, which is aspects, kettle, or lighter, whatever type of anomaly it is. But the important thing is that it is in during the winter events. If not, it's not going to be, you're not going to find it anywhere unless you can find them in auctions. Like I read you right now, it's a really good artifact, but people are still downplaying this type of artifact since they say, okay, it's less, so it's not that good. But people are really underrating this artifact, and I saw one player who has a good buff with his Crust, with his bullet resistance, and he really destroyed everybody because he had over 540 HP and they were all bullet resistance. Okay, for the third place instead, I think it's the Cursed Rose, because there are three types of rose: the rose, white rose, and then the Cursed Rose. The Cursed Rose is the one that gives you bullet resistance that ranges from 5.2 to 11.6, and then explosion protection of 3.25 and 6.5. So having it level 15, the Cursed Rose is going to give you a radiation of 1.89, bullet resistance of 15, and explosion protection of 8.41. And then at level 15, you have additional property of stamina regeneration, which is 3.75%, and a bullet resistance of 5.04, and then explosion protection of 2.85. Summing the bullet resistance 15 plus 5.04, it's going to give you a 20.04 of bullet resistance, and explosion protection of 8.41 plus 2.85 is going to give you 11.26 of explosion protection. And for the green one instead, you have a radiation of 1.98, a bullet resistance of 16.44, an explosion protection of 9.21, and at level 15 you're going to have an additional buff of stamina regeneration of 4.11%, and a bullet resistance of 5.53, and then explosion protection of 3.12. Summing the bullet resistance, you're going to have 16.44 plus 5.53, and it's going to give you a 21.97 of bullet resistance. And for the explosion protection instead, 9.21 plus 3.12 is going to give you a 12.33. And for the blue one, it's going to give you a radiation of 1.98, a bullet resistance of 17.95, an explosion protection of 10.06. At level 15 is going to provide you a additional buff of stamina regeneration, which is 4.49%, and a bullet resistance of 6.03, an explosion protection of 3.40. And summing the bullet resistance, you have 17.95 plus 6.03. It's going to provide you a 23.98 of bullet resistance. And explosion protection instead is going to give you 10.06 plus 3.4. It's going to give you a 13.46 of explosion protection. And for the purple one, it's going to give you a 1.98 of radiation, a bullet resistance of 19.45, an explosion protection of 10.9, and at level 15 it's going to give you a stamina regeneration of 4.86%. It's going to give you a bullet resistance of 6.54 and explosion protection of 3.69. So summing 19.45 plus 6.54 is going to give you a 25.99, which is 26, and then you're going to have explosion protection of 10.9 plus 3.69 is going to give you a 14.59 of explosion protection. And then for the red Cursed Rose is going to give you a radiation of 1.98, a bullet resistance of 20.96, and then an explosion protection of 11.75. And at level 15 you're going to have a stamina regeneration of 5.24%, a bullet resistance of 7.05, and then a explosion protection of 3.98. So summing bullet resistance, you're going to have 20.96 plus 7.05. You're going to have a total of 28.01 bullet resistance, and then explosion protection instead, you're going to have 11.75 plus 3.98. You're going to have 15.73 of explosion protection. And for the legendary Cursed Rose, so you're going to have a radiation of 1.98, a bullet resistance of 22.47, an explosion protection of 12.59. At level 15, you're going to have a stamina regeneration of 5.62%, a bullet resistance of 7.15, 2.55 and 4.26 of explosion protection, and summing the bull resistance you have 22.47 plus 7.755 is going to give you a 30.02 bullet resistance. Your explosion protection instead is 12.59 plus 4.26 is going to give you a 16.85 of the explosion protection. Yeah, so you can find the cursed rows in trampolines, which these trampolines are those anomalies where you jump and then your jump is going to be heightened, and if you time it well you can jump really high, and yeah, you can find it there together with the bracelet also, which is one of the best speed the best artifact for speed. Finally, Steel Hedgehog, my favorite. So for the Steel Hedgehog instead has a bullet resistance that ranges from 5.85 and then 13, a sight emission of 2.5 and plus 5, and a reaction to laceration of 1.25% and then 2.5%. At level 15, the white Steel Hedgehog is going to provide you 3.23 of reaction to laceration, a sight emission of 4.97, and a bullet resistance of 16.81. And then at level 15, you're going to have additional buff of stamina, which is 18.89%, and reaction to laceration of 1.16, and then bullet resistance of 5.69. So summing the reaction to laceration, which is 3.23% plus 1.16, you're going to have 4.39 reaction to laceration, and then a bullet resistance of 16.81 plus 5.69 is going to give you a 22.5 bullet resistance. For the green one instead, you're going to have a reaction to laceration of 3.54% and a sight emission of 4.95 debuff, a bullet resistance of 18.42. At level 15, you're going to have additional buff of stamina, which is 20.69%, and you're going to have a reaction to laceration 1.28%, and then a bullet resistance of 6.23. Summing the reaction to laceration which is 3.54 plus 1.28, you're going to have 4.82%, and then bullet resistance instead is going to be 18.42 plus 6.23 is going to give you a 24.65 of BR of bullet resistance. For Steel Hedgehog instead, you're going to have a 3.87%, and then a sight emission of 4.95. And a bullet resistance of 20.11. At level 15, you're going to have additional buff property of stamina, which is 22.59%. You're going to have a reaction to laceration of 1.39%, and then a bullet resistance of 6.81. So reaction to laceration is going to give you 3.87 plus 1.39. It's going to give you a 5.26% of reaction to laceration, and bullet resistance instead is going to give you 20.11 plus 6.81. It's going to give you a 26.92 of bullet resistance, which is really crazy for just one artifact at blue level, at blue rarity quality. And instead for the purple one, you're going to have a reaction to laceration of 4.19 and a sight emission of 4.95, and then a bullet resistance of 21.8. Out of 15, you're going to have additional property of stamina, which is 24.48%, reaction to laceration of 1.51%, and a bullet resistance of 7.38. Summing the reaction to laceration, which is 4.19 plus 1.51, is going to give you a 5.7% of reaction to laceration, and then a bullet resistance of 21.8 plus 7.38 is going to give you 29.18 bullet resistance, which is almost 30, and that is really crazy. Instead, for the red Steel Hedgehog, you're going to have a reaction to laceration of 4.52%, a sight emission of 4.95, then a bullet resistance of 23.49. Having a level 15, you're going to have additional property of the stamina, which is 26.38%, and a reaction to laceration of 1.63%, and bullet resistance of 7.95. Summing all this buff, 4.52 reaction to laceration percent plus 1.63 is going to give you a 6.15 reaction to laceration, and the bullet resistance instead is going to be 23.49 plus 7.95. It's going to give you a 31.44 for the red one. And then for the final one, for the final rarity of the Steel Hedgehog, which is the legendary artifact, you're going to have a reaction to laceration of 4.84%, a sight emission of 4.95, and then a bullet resistance of 25.18. At level 15, you're going to have additional property of stamina of 28.28%, a reaction to laceration of 1.74, and then a bullet resistance of 8.52. So having 8.84 plus 1.74, you're going to have a 6.58% of reaction to laceration, and then a bullet resistance of 25.18 plus 8.52 is going to give you a 33.7 of bullet resistance, which is extremely crazy. And yeah, so this is by far my favorite. Yeah, this is my favorite artifact, by the way. It's not only because it also gives you it has a decent design, it has also a decent, really decent statistics, but not only that, it's also cheaper than the Prism, which is the rarest artifact that is in the one of the rarest artifacts that is in the game, and almost also one of the most expensive artifact in the game, which is, I remember the blue one costs also 20 million or something, 20 million or 15 million or more than that, because the green green one costs sometimes 5 million, 6 million, and the blue one, yeah, almost like 15 million, 20 million sometimes. The purple one instead is going to 30 million. For these steel hedgehog instead in the auction, they cost 6.5 million. Already the purple one also gives you almost to 30 of bullet resistance, which is really great, a good alternative for the Prism, and it's just like 5 difference of bullet resistance. And the steel hedgehog also doesn't cost that much when you buy in the auction, which is 1.2 million. And like I told you before, it isn't that expensive if you see it in the good perspective, if you compare it to Prism, which is the last artifact. And yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's the best bullet resistance artifact, only because it is less pricey than the Prism, and it's really affordable. Here in the list, it doesn't show the type of anomaly. It is usually the humidity artifact, which is like a dust, and where you usually find the burr, you also find the sticky burr, you find the scrubber, and then the steel hedgehog. You usually find him there. Beneath it, you're going to have damage per seconds, and yeah, those are the type of anomaly. And for the last one instead, the Prism. Yeah, look at how bright it is. The Prism is the best of the best bullet resistance. It has a bullet resistance that ranges from 6.5 to 14.5, an explosion protection to 4.05 to 8.1, and then a sight emission of 2.5 to 5 sight emission. This artifact at white level, you're going to have sight emission of 4.97, a bullet resistance of 18.75, an explosion protection of 10.48, and then you're going to have at level 15 additional property of restoration of stamina regeneration of 4.66, bullet resistance of 6.33, and explosion protection of 3.49. So summing the bullet resistance, you're going to have 18.75 plus 6.33 is going to be 25.08, and then explosion protection of 10.48 to 3.49 is going to give you a 13.97 of explosion protection. And for the green Prism instead, is going to give you sight emission of 4.95, a bullet resistance of 20.55, and then explosion protection of 11.48. Level 15, you're going to have additional property of stamina regeneration of 5.10%, a bullet resistance of 6.94, and then explosion protection of 3.83. So summing the bullet resistance, which is 20.55 plus 694, is going to give you 27.49, and then explosion protection instead of 11.48 plus 3.83 is going to give you a 15.31 of explosion protection. And then for the blue Prism instead, is going to give you a sight emission of 4.95, a bullet resistance of 22.43, and then explosion protection of 12.53. And then at level 15, you're going to have additional property of stamina regeneration of 5.57%, an explosion protection of 4.18, and then a bullet resistance of 10.58, 22.43, and 7.58. You're going to have a 30.01 of bullet resistance, and for the explosion protection instead, it's 12.53 plus 4.18, going to give you 16.71 explosion protection. Yeah, so for the purple one, for the purple Prism, you're going to have a sight emission of 4.95, bullet resistance of 24.32, explosion protection of 13.58, then at level 15, and you're going to have additional property of 6.04%, and then explosion protection of 4.53, and then a bullet resistance of 8.22. Summing all the bullet resistance, you're going to have 24.52 plus 8.22. You're going to have 32.54 of bullet resistance, and you have explosion protection of 13.58 plus 4.53. You're going to have 18.811. And for the red Prism instead, you're going to have a sight emission of 4.95, a bullet resistance of 26.20, an explosion protection of 4.64, and then at 15 you're going to have a stamina regeneration as additional property of stamina regeneration 6.51%, an explosion protection of 4.88, and then a bullet resistance of 8.85. You're going to have, and summing all the additional property and then the original buff, you're going to have 26.2 plus 8.85 is going to give you 35.05 of bullet resistance, and then explosion protection of 14.64 plus 4.88, which is 19.52 explosion protection. And then the legendary Prism, which is the beast of all, the best of the best, you're going to have a sight emission of 4.95 and a bullet resistance of 28.09, and then explosion protection of 15.69. At level 15, you're going to have additional buff of stamina regeneration, which is 6.87%, an explosion protection of 5.23, and then a bullet resistance of 9.49. So summing the bullet resistance, 28.09 plus 9.49, you're going to have 37.58, and then you're going to have explosion protection instead, you're going to have 15.69, 5.23, you're going to have 20.92 of explosion protection. And yeah, that's Prism. It's the best of all, and that's why it's super pricey. But I still don't understand why people need to even the purple one, it has to be really that expensive, since it's almost the same as the purple steel hedgehog. Since the steel hedgehog has almost 30, and the difference is almost just like, it's almost like 3 of bullet resistance. So I don't know, I still don't get how people think they need to read more about the statistics of the steel hedgehog, because the steel hedgehog is almost identical to its counterpart, which is the purple prism, which is only 3. So I don't know why people need to sell it to 40 million or 60 million. Sometimes I see in the auction which is 60 million. That's super crazy. And yeah, and so this artifact, since it is one of the best, it's usually with the stasis, which is electrophysical. The stasis is an anomaly which it produces sound, and it's almost like transparent, and if you go to this anomaly, your screen is going to turn to gray, and then you're going to get instantly killed if you stay there. Yeah, with the anomalies, you're going to have spiral, mirror, shard, prism, and an atom. Yeah, so those are all the types of bullet resistance artifacts. Yeah, so those are all the bullet resistance artifact, and it's super crazy. So there are also some alternatives that you can use as the bullet resistance. You can go to 25 also, like you can use the Crust, or maybe you can use the shrimp. It depends on how is your playstyle. Maybe you're someone who is more centered about looting. Maybe you want to have also a good amount of carry weight. So you have a good amount of bullet resistance, a good amount of carry weight, and maybe your playstyle is more about having vitality, so you can use either the Cross or either the Fahrenheit. There's a lot of combination, and the important thing that you need to consider is at least these debuffs are going to be nullified, or at least going to be neutralized or lessened by some other artifacts. Like for example, the Viner can reduce the psi emission, so I can use, I don't know, 2 prism or 3 prism, so I can equip maybe an onion, and I can equip Viner to counter all the effects of the prism in order to have more bullet resistance. So it's really useful to have this knowledge. Like, it's, I don't know, and also that's why it's really important to know all this type of artifact. And since people usually value the prism as this god, yeah, it is really strong. The purple one has only 3 difference of bullet resistance. Yeah, the steel hedgehog can also have higher buff, but that doesn't exclude the prism, because maybe the purple prism can have 33 or 34 bullet resistance, and maybe the steel hedgehog has 31 or 32, so it doesn't make that lot of difference. Maybe if it was like 37 and then 30, so those 7 bullet resistance, of course, is going to make difference. But in this case, it's not that much. So I don't know. Well, maybe people in the future will change their mind. Probably not, but I don't know. Maybe they're going to introduce another artifact which is more rare. So yeah, so that's my final verdict. That's my final. Yeah, that's my final judgment. Yeah.